We're averaging about 300 mass shootings a year. No other country comes close. So, yes, this is up. And if we don't call it out for what it is, if we're not able to speak clearly, if we're not able to act decisively, then we will continue to have this kind of bloodshed in America. And I cannot accept that.
Well, that was Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke using some blunt language there to call out lawmakers over America's gun laws in the wake of Saturday's shooting spree in West Texas that left 7 people dead. This as Democratic leaders urge Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to take up gun control legislation. Alex Vogel is a former general counsel for the National Republican Senatorial Committee and former deputy counsel for the Republican National Committee. Joel Rubin worked in the Obama State Department and was a senior aide to former Senator Tom Harkin. Good morning to both of you, Alex and Joel, and thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Alex, I'll start with you first. What sort of appetite is there within the Republican Party for some sort of change to our gun control laws?
Well, both President Trump and Leader McConnell have made clear this is a conversation that's going to come up in the Senate as soon as they come back. The question as to appetite, I think, is not one of whether or not they're willing to have that conversation. To me, in order for that to be a productive conversation, the question is whether that will be a political conversation or whether that will be a policy conversation.
Joel, so how do you do that?
If we can limit this debate, that can be productive.
So how do you do that, Joel? How do you have a productive debate? Where are you willing to come to the table with Republicans?
Sure.
What is it that your party is asking for?
Sure. Well, first you have to actually have a debate, and Leader McConnell blew it when he didn't bring the Senate back in a month ago after the shootings in El Paso and Dayton. So now here we are again. This is a repetitive cycle in this country. We have seen mass shootings and gun violence not stop under Mitch McConnell's leadership, nor under President Trump. So Democrats have passed bills in the House. Republicans have supported them. There's bipartisan legislation in the Senate, mentioned to me, pending. Mitch McConnell has to actually take them up and get a debate going so that we can have floor action in the Senate. But he's not willing to do it, and so we're stuck in this nightmare scenario.
So, but September 9th quickly approaching. We're going to see lawmakers return. But, Alex, to Joel's point, we did hear from Senator Mitch McConnell. He did promise a Senate debate, but then everybody went home to their home districts, and this debate sort of seemed to fade away. Now we have 7 people dead after another shooting. So when lawmakers return, what sort of action do you see taking place? Because here was the latest from President Trump. We heard him talk about there was an appetite for background checks. We heard him say really common sense, sensible, important background checks for gun buyers. And that did seem to please some Democrats who were willing, who saw him willing to come to the table on this issue. But then we heard the president say this.
If you look at the last 4 or 5, going back even 5 or 6 or 7 years, for the most part, as strong as you make your background checks, they would not have stopped any of it. So it's a big problem. It's a mental problem. It's a big problem.
So, Alex, we're left wondering where he stands on background checks, because there seems to be a couple different stories happening there.
Look, the president's made clear that's a conversation he wants to have. He's also made the point, which I think is accurate, that this is a multifaceted problem and no one of these is going to be solved by any one solution. That being said, Leader McConnell has made it clear he's prepared to have that conversation and have that debate. Whether that debate ultimately leads to legislation that changes policy is an open question. Again, I would argue the less political this can be, the more focused around a narrow set of policy ideas and conversations, the more likely that will be to produce an outcome. If this is a bunch of yelling about who's responsible for what a madman does in Texas or elsewhere, it's not going to get anywhere, and that would be unfortunate.
You know, I'll end, Joel, by looking at this latest Quinnipiac survey. This is from August on gun reform proposals. When we do talk about the appetite, here's how those responded. Background checks, 93% of them support that. Gun purchase license, 82%. Red flag laws, which we've heard Republicans talk about, 80%. Assault weapons bans, 60%. So how optimistic are you when lawmakers return that something can and will get done. Final thoughts.
Yes, Sandra, you're pointing out some really great numbers there. This is not radical to have gun safety legislation move into Congress. The problem is that Mitch McConnell doesn't want to debate. He's not leaving any room for a discussion in the Senate and forcing all of us to argue at each other when we see overwhelming American support for gun control legislation, gun violence prevention, background checks. He needs to move.
All right, I want to let Alex have the last word there. Go ahead, Alex.
Look, Leader McConnell has said they're going to have this debate. I think we should take him at his word, and we'll see how that debate goes. And as long as it's an actual debate about those issues and not Beto talking about taking everyone's gun away, then I think that can be productive.
Well, this is just a slice of the debate that is happening across the country. We'll see where it goes when lawmakers return. Thank you to both of you for coming on the program this morning.